Bai Ning squatted beside the cracked reservoir and used her fingers to push away the soil, revealing the last layer of moist gravel underneath. She scooped up a handful and wrung out the strips of cloth. The drops of water dripping down were barely enough for a child to take half a sip. Behind her, several children from the tribe were tugging at the corners of her clothes, their voices as thin as the chirping of insects in the wind. "Sister Ning, water," a girl whispered, staring at the cloth. Bai Ning handed over the wet cloth, stood up, and looked around the camp. Between the tents, women handed out pieces of moldy roots, fist-sized portions to each person. The men leaned against the gun racks, wiping the rusty barrel guns, with exhaustion etched on their faces. She took a deep breath, walked into the center stake tent, and gathered the corps members. Yechen was the first to arrive. He was carrying a shovel and his shoulders were still stained with dust from the patrol. "The scout is back, the situation is not good," he said. His voice was low, as if he was suppressing something. Su Wan followed, holding a small bottle of seed samples in her hand, with the mouth of the bottle tightly wrapped in cloth. "There is only enough food to last 7 days. If the water source is not replenished, we will have to move." But where to move in the wilderness? Bai Ning nodded and waited for all 8 people to sit down. She drew the border lines on the sand table. Han Xiao's alliance has approached the northeast slope. The scouts saw their convoy, 300 people, carrying heavy machine guns and detectors. They are not here to talk, they are here to grab the last breath. The tent became quiet. Some people clenched their fists and some looked down at the ground. Yechen knocked on the sand table. "Their resource point is behind the slope and the defense is loose. But we attacked directly and lost half of our men." "Yes, so we won't attack directly." Bai Ning used iron nails to draw a curve on the sand table and bypassed the tribe underground. "We dig a tunnel, enter from here, pass through the old mine veins, and reach their wells and granaries. After a sneak attack, we will blow up the entrance and cut off their escape route." Su Wan frowned and pushed up her glasses. "Tunnel? The geology is unstable and the risk of landslides is high. Besides, the seed storage is not ready yet, and we are starving ourselves. There are risks, but it's worse to just wait and see." Bai Ning looked at Yechen. "When you patrolled, you confirmed that the entrance to the mine had not collapsed, right?" Yechen hesitated for a moment and nodded. "The entrance is narrow, but it can be expanded. We will dig 50 meters in 3 days, and I will lead people in shifts." There was a hint of eagerness in his eyes, as if he was planning something. An old engineer shook his head. "Han Xiao has a detector. What if he is discovered halfway through digging? We don't even have decent explosives." Bai Ning took out several iron pipes and gunpowder packets from his pocket. "Use these sets of improvised explosive bombs. Yechen, you are responsible for assembling them. I will explore the route and mark the support points. Su Wan, you will be in charge of logistics and give priority to food distribution to diggers. Raise your hands if you agree." He slowly raised his hand, first Yechen, then Su Wan, and finally even the old engineer followed. Bai Ning breathed a sigh of relief. This was their first step from defense to initiative. The meeting ended, she grabbed her tools and took Yechen out of the camp. The setting sun lengthened the shadows, and they climbed up the eastern slope to the hidden old mine mouth. Bai Ning knelt down and used a spade to push aside the vines, exposing the cracks. She tapped on the rock wall, listening for the echo. "Here the soil is soft and the entry point is here." She carved an arrow on the stone to mark the location of the support column. Yechen handed over the shovel. "I'll try digging 1 meter first to make sure." He shoveled hard, and the first shovelful of soil came out, mixed with gravel. Bai Ning nodded and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Everyone will start working tomorrow. Let me tell you, this is not gambling, it is a way to survive." As night falls around the campfire, people whisper about the tunnel plan. Some are relieved, while others are still muttering about the risks. Bai Ning looked around, went back to the tent and lay down, mentally calculating the distance between the support beams. The despair is still there, but at least there is a direction. Early the next morning, the diggers gathered at the mine entrance. Yechen divided himself into teams of 10, taking turns shoveling soil and transporting slag. Bai Ning personally went down into the pit, measured the depth, and fixed the wooden beams with ropes. The first meter went smoothly, the soil was moist and easy to dig. Slow down the pace, don't be too fast, she shouted to a team. Su Wan brought porridge and distributed it to the poachers. Be careful. Before the seeds are unsealed. This is the main force. Her voice was worried, but she did not object. In the afternoon, when digging the second meter, the shovel suddenly got stuck. Yechen pried hard and shoveled out an iron box with rusty corners and vague writing on it. Bai Ning came closer, wiped the dust and spread out a yellowed map in the box, marking the underground veins and a red circle pointing directly to the depths of Han Xiao's resource point. Is this an old mine map? Yechen whispered, his eyes becoming complicated. Bai Ning's heart sank. There is a note on the map. Virus-contaminated area. Why is it here? Bai Ning pinched the corners of the map tightly. Her fingertips turned white. She squatted by the mine entrance, folded the paper and stuffed it into her pocket. She raised her head and said to Yechen, "Don't spread it yet. This note may be an alarm from the old times. Let's walk around the red circle." Yechen nodded, leaning the shovel on his shoulder, and glanced at the entrance of the tunnel. "I'll guard here while you go back to the camp to mobilize resources. Su Wan needs to dig up the food first, otherwise work will stop tomorrow." His tone was steady, as if he was stating the facts, but with a hint of undoubt. Bai Ning stood up and wiped the dirt off her knees. "You guard the scene and keep your guns loaded. If Han Xiao's detector sweeps by, hold them back." She turned around and walked downhill, speeding up her pace. In the camp, Su Wan was instructing the women to distribute rhizome pieces. A boy suddenly pushed away the team, grabbed 2 pieces and stuffed them into his arms. "Xiao Lu." Su Wan grabbed his arm and her voice became sharp. "Each person has 1 share. Priority will be given to digging." The boy broke away, his eyes red. "My brother is digging. Why can we only drink muddy water?" A few non-digger men around stopped. Someone whispered in agreement, and the air was filled with sultry dissatisfaction. When Bai Ning arrived, the scene was already tense. She squeezed into the crowd, knelt down and touched the boy's head. "Your brother dug the tunnel to fight for water wells for everyone. Today's grain will be given to the diggers in exchange for shoveling an extra meter. How about you go into the pit tomorrow?" The boy hesitated, nodded and stepped back. The men exchanged glances and said nothing. Su Wan breathed a sigh of relief and handed over a bottle of seed samples. "Ning, this distribution will make people hold grudges. The water is only as small as the wet cloth, and the seeds have to be unsealed until the tunnel is clear." She tapped the bottle with her fingers, her eyes hiding calculations, as if she was weighing something. "You have to dig out even if you have a grudge." Bai Ning took the bottle and gave it to Su Wan. "You keep an eye on the distribution. I'll take the second group of people to the mine entrance. Yechen needs more gunpowder packets." She grabbed a few iron pipes and walked towards the tool pile. The distribution was finalized and the camp was busy again, but there were a few more whispers, and the cost of resources began to show. The afternoon sun was shining slantingly, and the heat wave was rolling at the old mine entrance on the east slope. Yechen stood by the pit, with the gun across his chest and his eyes staring into the distance of the wasteland. 10 diggers took turns shoveling the soil, and the mud was brought out in baskets, which was already 3 meters deep. Bai Ning climbed up with a new gunpowder bag and handed him an iron pipe. "Assemble the bombs to reinforce the support beams," she said, wiping the sweat from her forehead. Yechen took it, skillfully rolled up the gunpowder and stuffed it into the tube. The metals on his hands were scarred with scars that he had grown up with, and Bai Ning knew they were from patrols. "It's not just explosive bombs, Ning. We have to strengthen our weapons. Han Xiao has 300 people, and they can be wiped out by heavy machine guns. I suggest melting iron pipes with slag to make stinging bullets. They have a long range and can penetrate armor." As he spoke, he flattened the mouth of the pipe, his eyes flashing eagerly, like adding pen to a blueprint. Bai Ning watched his movements and nodded. "Okay, you bring 2 blacksmiths to try it out. But save the gunpowder and give priority to the tunnel." She recalled that when she was a child, he was always the first to stand in front of her, and now his eagerness seemed to have an extra layer of calculating territory. Without asking any questions, she grabbed a shovel and went down into the pit, measuring the cracks in the wall and fixing the new wooden beams with ropes. The diggers have a steady rhythm and the sound of shoveling is measured. Yechen climbed to the top of the slope, raised his homemade telescope, and scanned the northeast. The shadow of the convoy is 5 kilometers away from us. You can hear the buzzing of the detector, but don't go this way yet. He reported in a low voice, jumped down and distributed the watercloth, giving each person a sip. In the pit, Bai Ning shoveled away a piece of wet soil, revealing the old track iron bars. She picked it up and handed it to Yechen. This can melt the stinging needle and transport it back. Yechen tied the basket and patted her shoulder. When you were a kid, you explored and I guarded you. Now it's your turn to lead. We have access to the tunnel, and the Han Xiao well is ours. His smile was short, filled with old familiarity, but mixed with the flames of ambition. Su Wan suddenly appeared, carrying a food bag and panting. The porridge has been divided, and most of the hand-picked portions have been distributed. But someone in the camp is making trouble, saying it's unfair. If you don't mediate, we will go on strike tomorrow. She pushed up her glasses and handed a bowl of slurry to Bai Ning. Bai Ning took a sip, and the syrup stuck in his throat. Tell them that the tunnel is open and all the wells and granaries have been recovered. Yechen, send 2 guards back to the camp to suppress the formation. Yechen nodded and chose 2 strong men to go down the slope. With the dispute suppressed, the team's tacit understanding loosened a bit, and the sound of shoveling became louder. The sun was setting in the west, and the tunnel was already 5 meters deep. Bai Ning knocked on the front wall and listened for the echo. The soil is loosening and the support beams are thickening. She marked the location and the diggers followed. Yechen patrolled outside the mouth, his gun flashing coldly. The anxiety about resource shortages is still there, but cooperation is like a beam, supporting initial unity. Suddenly, a muffled sound came from the bottom of the pit. Just as Bai Ning stepped firmly on her front foot, gravel fell from above her head. "Hold on!" she shouted, but the back wall cracked and a large chunk of earth collapsed, burying the legs of the 2 diggers. Dust flew and shovels clanked and scattered. Yechen rushed into the pit and pushed away the rocks. "Hang on!" He pulled out a person covered in blood. Bai Ning dug out the second person and touched the edge of the red circle on the map. A wisp of green mold seeped out, like a living creature squirming. Virus-contaminated area. A landslide dug it up? The lights in the pit flickered, and everyone stopped and stared at the mold. If you continue digging, the risk will double. If you stop, Han Xiao's convoy will arrive. Bai Ning clenched the handle of the shovel, taking the next step. There was no way out. Yechen slid down from the pit, threw out a hemp rope and tied it around Asan's waist, and the 2 of them pulled together. The soil was loose, and the blood marks on Asan's leg were so deep that the bones were visible, but they were not broken. He coughed out the dirt and muttered, "Mild? Don't touch it." Bai Ning ignored it, tore off his sleeve to wrap up the wound, and looked up at the wall of the pit. The landslide only buried the legs, but fortunately the wooden beams held up most of them, but the green mold spots had spread 1/2 meter, like ink slowly seeping out. She grabbed an old track iron bar and used it as a brace to dig into the moldy edge, sealing off the spread path. First, move people into the pit and encrypt the beams. Go around the bad luck and don't dig inside the red circle. Bai Ning took a deep breath, and the smell of dust mixed with mold entered her nose. She dropped the shovel, knelt down and used the shovel to pry open the mud on the leg of the second digger. The man's name was Asan, who was usually responsible for transporting the basket, but now his face was buried in the soil and he could only breathe. "Yechen, rope," she shouted, her voice low but steady, and her fingers inserted into the crack to check for pulse. The diggers started moving, and Asan was carried out of the pit and laid down on his back. Yechen wiped the mud on his face and handed over the watercloth. "You saved them, Ning. But this bad thing. The old picture said that the virus will rot the flesh if it touches it." Hesitation flashed in his eyes, and he pressed the gun with his hand, as if weighing the cost of continuing. "You also have to dig out rotten flesh." Bai Ning stood up and tapped on new cracks to mark support points. "Send 2 people back to the camp and ask Su Wan to bring medicine. Don't let the camp know the details, otherwise we will strike." She assigned tasks, the diggers picked up their shovels, and the rhythm in the pit resumed intermittently. Panic was still hanging on everyone's brows, but her movements were like anchors, keeping them afloat. Outside the pit, the afterglow of the setting sun lengthened the shadows. Yechen climbed to the top of the slope and raised his binoculars to scan the northeast. The convoy is approaching. 3 motorcycles, pioneer detectives. 5 kilometers away, the detector light flashes, heading straight to the mine entrance. He jumped down and grabbed the prototype of the Stinger bomb, an iron pipe filled with gunpowder and slag, and the mouth of the pipe was tapped. I'll lead 4 people to gag you while you stay in the pit. Bai Ning nodded, took out the map from his pocket and compared it with the red circles. Stop them and ask for information alive. Han Xiao's 300 people will not come in person, and the vanguard is a test. She pushed him, turned around and went down to the pit to command the encrypted beam. Yechen selected 3 strong men, spread out the bushes behind the slope, loaded their guns with needle bullets, and waited in hiding. The sound of motorcycle engines approached, and dust and smoke rose. 3 vehicles carry 4 people. The lead agent sweeps the ground with a detector, and the back seat holds a light machine gun. 200 meters away from the mine entrance, Yechen whispered, "Wait close and fire a volley of needles and bullets." The spies got out of the car, and the instruments buzzed to detect the abnormality at the pit entrance. They exchanged gestures and moved forward. The first bullet roared out, the iron pipe penetrated the motorcycle's fuel tank, the gunpowder exploded, and the car overturned and the 2 people rolled to the ground. Gunshots rang out and the spies fired back, bullets grazing the wooden beams and flying into splinters. Bai Ning heard it in the pit, grabbed the shovel and rushed up the slope, aimed at the lone spy and pulled the trigger. The Stinger bullet hit his shoulder, and the man fell to the ground. She didn't stop, rolled into the ditch for cover and shouted, "Yechen, outflank with the left wing." Yechen led his men out of the bushes and fired with guns to suppress them. The remaining spies retreated and 1 person threw a flash bomb to cover their retreat, but the second bomb blew off the rear wheel and the motorcycle tipped over. The battle was short and ended in 3 minutes. 2 were dead, 1 wounded and 1 escaped. Shell casings were scattered around the mine entrance, and the smell of smoke and gunpowder overwhelmed the musty smell. Bai Ning stood up from the ditch and checked the injured. The spy covered his arms, vomited blood and glared at her. The tunnel is useless. The leader goes straight to the seed vault." She squatted down, searched his pocket, and pulled out the crumpled map fragments, marked with the coordinates of the storage vault, facing the outside of the red circle deep in the old mine. Yechen walked closer and kicked the barrel of the gun, his eyes turning eagerly to approval. "You kiss the front line and rescue the enemy. Without your judgment, this wave would have leaked." He patted her on the shoulder. There were many layers of calculations in the old intimacy, as if he was testing her bottom line. Diggers gathered around, carried away the wounded and cut their bodies into pieces. Bai Ning folded up the fragments of the map and stuffed them into his pocket. The injured detective was taken back to the camp to ask for a confession. "Once the tunnel is stable, continue digging, but turn outside the red circle." She distributed the spoils, motorcycle parts and melting needles, and the detector was disassembled and studied. The fear receded and excitement surged in. Each person moved half a beat faster, and the sound of shoveling was sonorous. Su Wan arrived out of breath, carrying a medicine box and gruel. "The camp is stable and there are no strikes. But there are gunshots and someone wants to run." She glanced at the map fragments and pushed up her glasses. "These coordinates. The entrance to the seed bank is close. I can open it, but what should I do if it contaminates the mold?" She tapped her fingers on the medicine box, her eyes deepening with calculation, as if she was hiding the secret steps of unsealing. Bai Ning handed over the porridge bowl and gave it to Di Hand. "You test the mold and find a solution. Yechen, double the night patrol. Night falls and the lights in the tunnel extend the shadows." The tunnel collapsed and was sealed, and the spies were repulsed, but the map fragments revealed a new image. Han Xiao went straight to the seeds instead of just the well. The food was left for 6.5 days, the watercloth was dry, and the deep hidden dangers were revealed. Bai Ning rubbed her temples and sat down leaning against the wall of the pit. The wick oil lamp swayed, drawing out the shadowy outline of the tunnel. The diggers took turns to rest. Asan was wrapped in a bandage and fell asleep against the basket, scraping the bottom of the porridge bowl dry. She looked at Su Wan. The woman was squatting on the mold ceiling area, using tweezers to pick up green spot samples and stuffing them into vials in the medicine box. Did you ask for a confession? What did the spy say? Su Wan pushed up her glasses without raising her head, her movements as precise as scissors. Tied to the camp, Yechen is interrogating. Han Xiao's main force is 300 people, divided into 3 groups. 1 to occupy the water well, 1 to block the mine entrance, and the main force is going straight to the entrance of the seed bank. They have an upgraded version of the detector, which can lock on the vibration at a depth of 50 meters. She capped the bottle and handed Bai Ning a compressed biscuit, and the crumbs fell into the soil. The mold sample has been tested and it is not a live virus, but inhaling it will burn the lungs. The ceiling beam can hold up, but there are 6.5 days of food left, and only 3 days of water and cloth. You dug too hard. Su Wan knelt down and unfolded her old notes. The edges of the pages were worn and yellowed. She pointed to the diagram. Housing, airtight valve, decontamination injection point. The Doomsday storage is a 3-layer seal. The first layer is an air pressure lock that cannot be pried open by a shovel, and must be corroded with acid. The second layer is vacuum, and if it is opened incorrectly, it will release an oxygen explosion. The third layer of seeds are dormant and require the awakening agent I prepared. Otherwise the germination rate will be 0. She paused and pressed her finger on the corner of the page. But the contamination mold is close to the warehouse door. You have to filter the air before opening, otherwise the seeds will be destroyed. It will take 2 people an hour, and there is no way out. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were a little more tense, as if she was weighing how much to share. Bai Ning took a bite of the biscuit, and it felt dry and stuck in her throat. She swallowed and pointed to the outside of the red circle where the map fragments fit together. The seed bank is near. Where is the unsealing procedure? We can't wait for them to arrive first. These words were not an order, but a test. Su Wan could feel the things hidden in her, like the secret compartments in the medicine chest. The sound of shoveling sounded again, and the tunnel was extended to 8 meters. The digging hands were rotated. Each person shoveled for 2 hours and had an hour's rest. The water cloth was wrung out and he drank separately. His throat was dry and painful. Bai Ning personally wielded the shovel, tapping the iron head on the hard soil, sweat dripping down the bridge of his nose. Su Wan marked the support points at the back and occasionally handed tools. Turn left 3 times and align the coordinates of the debris. Yechen, who was on night patrol, occasionally poked his head and dropped the patched iron bars made of motorcycle parts. The camp is stable, and the 2 who wanted to run were pushed back. But the spies refused to reveal the main route. His tone was tired, and when his eyes glanced at Su Wan, he paused for half a second, as if calculating the share of the 3 of them together. The wind howled outside the pit, and Yechen's night patrol footsteps could be heard intermittently. Bai Ning folded up the map, stood up and patted the soil. You teach me the procedure and I will practice. Yechen stays outside, and you and I will continue digging outside the red circle with 2 digging hands. The shortcut will be available tomorrow morning. Su Wan nodded, collected the notes, and stood up to distribute the medicine to the shift workers. The relationship is getting closer at this moment, not because of the warm relationship between sisters, but because of the tacit understanding of each other. Bai Ning needs her knowledge, and Su Wan needs her decision-making. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the tip of the shovel hit the air. Bai Ning stopped and knocked to confirm. The front was not solid soil, but an old door panel covered with rusty iron, with the edge embedded in the crack of the wall like a forgotten door latch. She wiped away the plaster and revealed the sign, B17 Maintenance Tunnel, no entry. Diggers gathered around her, murmurs of excitement surged, and someone patted her back. Shortcut. Go straight to the red circle. Su Wan came closer, shined the light into the crack of the door and smelled it. The old mine tunnel leads to the seed bank and machine room. It saves 2 days of digging. But she frowned and pointed to the cool breeze seeping out of the crack under the door. There is an organic smell in the wind. There may be maintenance equipment inside. If it breaks down, it will leak. Bai Ning grabbed the iron bar and pried the lock, and the rust peeled off. The door creaked open, revealing a dark passage, 2 meters wide and 1.5 meters high, with broken wires hanging from the wall. Excitement lit up the tunnel like a lamp. The diggers scrambled to get ahead, but she blocked them. I'll explore first, Su Wan will follow, bringing a rope lamp. The three people filed into the old tunnel, and the sound of gravel under their feet echoed. Bai Ning was in front, stabbing the gun with needle bullets and scanning the wall with a flashlight. Under the mottled paint was a flowchart, labeled Seed Vault Airtight Cabin B17 Direct Access. The shortcut was confirmed, anticipation straining her nerves, but she slowed down, paying attention to every crevice. Su Wan whispered from behind. This diagram matches my notes. The unsealing point is at the end, but there is a pressure valve on the old road. If you step on it wrongly, it will collapse. The relationship deepened here, and she took the initiative to guide the way and make up for Bai Ning's blind spots. The passage curved for 50 meters, and the air became cooler and damper. Yechen was guarding the door outside, shouting intermittently, "Invincible trace, continue." Bai Ning's heartbeat stabilized, and around the corner he saw an iron ladder going up, with a roulette valve on the top of the ladder. Su Wan checked. "This is the machine room, turn it 3 times to open it." She demonstrated the gesture, and Bai Ning took note of it. The two of them turned together, and the valve made a low sound and became loose. Excited, they exchanged smiles. The seeds were close at hand, and the food crisis could be solved. But suddenly there was a thin sound under the ladder. It was not the wind, but the sound of distant drilling with a regular rhythm, like another shovel team advancing on the opposite soil layer. Bai Ning turns off the light and listens closely. The voice was mixed with human words, vague but urgent. "Upgrade detection. Go straight to the B-17. Su Wan grabbed her arm, her eyes alert. Rather than fighting in isolation, Han Xiao's tunnel network has been woven into the old ruins. The main line extends far beyond the mine and affects the entire wasteland underground. Their tunnel network is connected to the old road, and they are heading straight towards the B-17. Bai Ning wiped her face with plaster and breathed steadily. "We're close, within 50 meters. We can't break through forcefully. We need to go back to the main pit to assemble weapons first." She pointed to the pile of motorcycle parts. Broken wheel frames, twisted wires, and prototype explosive bombs tied with iron wires. Yechen knelt down to inspect, his tired eyes flashing sharply. "Okay. I'll melt the iron bars to make the fuse tube and fill it with stinging bullets. You compress the gunpowder powder." Su Wan handed over the chemical powder in the medicine box. "This is the remaining acid liquid. Mixed with saltpeter it can explode, but the smoke is strong and the lung-burning mold will follow." The three of them worked in a tacit understanding and tied up the barbed wire with white condensation. Yechen knocked the wheel frame into a tube and Su Wan weighed the proportion of the powder. Under the light of the tunnel, the fingers interlocked like gears, and trust was pulled closer in the movement. Yechen patted her shoulder when handing over the tool. "You make a quick decision, I would have blown the door open." Half an hour later, the first tunnel blasting device took shape. An iron cylinder half a meter long, with 20 needle bombs stuffed inside, an iron wire lead at the end connected to a gunpowder bag, and wrapped with gravel fragments. Bai Ning lifted the test weight, and the weight of the barrel pressed heavily on his wrist. How was the camp before the test? Did the spies relent? Yechen wiped his sweat and sat next to the map, mocking himself in a tired tone. "Kill him to death. The main force is 300, detecting and locking vibrations. They dig harder than us. But the camp is suppressed. Those two who want to escape, I lock the firewood shed. Food for 6.5 days, the water has spread. Asan can dig when he wakes up." He paused, his eyes glanced at Su Wan, and then fell on Bai Ning's face. "With the seeds in hand, the tribe can not only guard the mines but also expand. There is an old well network outside the red circle. If we take the Alliance's water source, we can swallow up half of the wasteland." These words were like cracks in the iron bars, revealing the edge of ambition. Bai Ning tied the last wire tightly without raising her head. "The seeds of expansion are sown. Survive this wave first." She felt that his eyes were sticky, as if he was measuring her bottom line, but she temporarily suppressed her doubts. Yechen saved people with a shovel, patrolled sleeplessly at night, and his loyalty was still there. Su Wan interjected, her voice as flat as a weight. "Expansion is about resources. There are 3 days left of water cloth, and the moldy ceiling beam cannot sustain a long battle. After the bomb smoke has dissipated, the air must be filtered before opening. She pushed up her glasses and pointed to her notes. I practiced the procedure, but the pressure valve of the warehouse door was stepped on incorrectly, and the old tunnel collapsed. The relationship shifted slightly here. Su Wan filled in Bai Ning's blind spot, and Yechen's eyes wandered between the two of them, deepening his calculations. Testing time. Yechen lit a fire and folded it, and the lead wire was sizzling red. Bai Ning grabbed the rope and pulled everyone back 10 meters and hid behind the wall of the pit. The tube is placed at the entrance of the passage, and gravel is piled up to cover it. Gunpowder exploded, shock waves hit the face like waves of earth, stinging needles shot out and hit the wall, and the smoke was filled with sour smoke. Bai Ning coughed the probe. The entrance of the passage exploded 3 meters down, blocked by rubble, and the sound of enemy drilling was cut off. She patted Yechen on the back and said, "It's done. 10 of them are ready to stop them for 2 days." The warmth was like a wick and oil fire, briefly surrounding the 3 of them. The cooperation worked and the food crisis was nearly solved. Yechen picked up the remaining needle bullets and smiled at the corner of his mouth. "Don't stop. After this kind of sub-treasure is taken, I will lead 10 people to attack Shuijing Road through the shortcut, and half of the alliance will collapse. Bai Ning, you will be the leader, I will support the force, Su Wan will take care of the crops. The 3 of us will divide the eastern half of the wasteland, how about it?" He looked directly at her. His tone was no longer tired, and he was probing and eager, like gunpowder in an iron cylinder. Bai Ning's heart sank. This was not a suggestion of loyalty, but a line drawing of shares. Her throat was dry and she handed him the water cloth. "Dongban is too big. Stop Han Xiao first, and let's talk about expansion and wait for the green shoots to emerge." The cracks in her trust loomed, and she turned around and gave the tools to her hands to hide her uneasiness. Yechen shrugged. "It's up to you. But the opportunity waits." His eyes glanced at Su Wan again. The woman lowered her head to weigh the second tube of powder and did not answer. The diggers took turns to reload. 5 explosive bombs were discharged beside the pit, and the iron cylinder reflected the light like a tombstone. Su Wan suddenly stopped, moved closer to the map fragments, and compared the old tunnel flowchart with a frown. "Wait a minute. There is a backup lock behind the valve in the B-17 machine room. The upgraded version detects not only vibrations, but also locks changes in air pressure." She pointed to a hidden line in the red circle. "If they arrive first, they will activate the self-destruction program of the warehouse door and burn all the seeds. There is only half a day left to open the window." Bai Ning grabbed the pipe gun and looked at the black crack of the old door. The sound of enemy drilling was faintly repeated, mixed with the sound of scraping metal. The crisis escalated, and the internal tension was like smoke. She ordered, "Yechen will guard the door, Su Wan will prepare the acid, and I will lead 2 people to lay out a bomb formation. We cannot let them lock the warehouse." Bai Ning pressed her hand on the valve and froze. The sound of drilling seeped out from deep in the passage under the stairs, with a rhythm like the beating of a heart, mixed with vague human speech. She whispered to Su Wan, "Back off. Tell Yechen to seal the door." Su Wan nodded, grabbed the rope lamp and retreated. The 2 of them stepped lightly on the gravel and exited the 50-meter-old tunnel. Yechen heard the signal outside. The iron bar barred the door panel horizontally, and the rusty lock clicked shut. "Enemy?" he asked, barrel gun loaded with needle rounds, scanning the black hole. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the tunnel became more stuffy and the water cloth was squeezed out for the last time. Yechen melted the 3rd tube. The firelight reflected his side face, and the clues of his ambition were burning closer. Su Wan handed over her notes. "Practice 3 rounds of valves, but the self-destruct lock requires a password. I have old cards in the box, but there is only 1 left." Bai Ning nodded and the relationship became tighter. But she knew that Yechen was planning to weave a web. The explosive array was just formed, and murderous intent lurked behind the rubble at the entrance of the passage, but Su Wan's words were like a cold wind. The seed storage had been locked by enemy detection, and the air pressure needle had jumped. Bai Ning grasped the pipe gun tightly and fixed her eyes on the crack behind the rubble pile at the entrance of the passage. The sound of drilling came intermittently, and the enemy was trying to block the mouth. she ordered in a low voice. Yechen, after melting this tube, take San and the others to continue digging into the side wall. Circle the hidden line around the red circle and go straight to the warehouse door. Su Wan, filter the smoke and open the note after the air is clear. Yechen nodded, tongues of fire licking the edge of the iron cylinder, and he wiped the sweat from his forehead. The side wall is thin, and it can be opened within 2 hours. But the smoke is not completely dispersed, and the lungs are like stuffing cloth. He knocked on the wall of the cylinder and returned to work with concentration. Su Wan pulled up the medicine box mask and distributed a wet cloth to cover her mouth. She weighed out the last of the acid and dropped it into the gunpowder bag. Lower the saltpeter ratio and reduce the smoke. The mold will spread and you will cough for 3 days after inhaling it. Bai Ning took the cloth, tied it tightly behind his neck, and pushed the side wall with 2 diggers to shovel the soil. Debris rolled down, and lights illuminated remnants of the old track. Asen woke up and joined in, wielding a shovel with his thin arms. Sister Ning, the enemy can't stop us, go straight down to the warehouse. He whispered. The spies let go. Han Xiao's main force is 300, leaving 50 to guard the well. Bai Ning stepped firmly on the track, the shovel cut into the wet soil, and the side wall collapsed a meter wide, and the cool breeze and the smell of earth hit his face. 2-hour shift, shoveling sounds like rain. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the side walls were fully opened, and the tunnel penetrated the 50-meter cavity in front of the B-17 warehouse door. Bai Ning probed, and the light beam swept across the metal door. The pressure gauge needle had jumped to the yellow zone, and the self-destruction lock was half a day away. She waved in summons. It's through. Recycle the parts and go back to lay out the formation. The 3 of them sat side by side on the track, passing water cloths to wet their mouths. During a short breath, Yechen removed the remaining iron from the motorcycle frame and bundled it into spare needles. The Qingmei is close at hand. Su Wan picked up the map fragments and pieced together the red circles and hidden lines. This is a backup airway. Patrols will go out. The 3 of us need to be lightly armed to infiltrate. She pushed up her glasses and pointed to the old card. 1 password. Practice the valve 3 times before using it. Yechen squatted on the ground to check the explosive cartridge, and his tone became harder. Lightly armed? There are 300 enemies. Let's blow up the gate of the library, kill the well, and swallow half of it before talking about the seeds. He straightened up, put the gun on his shoulder, and glanced at Su Wan. You guard the seed knowledge, I support the field with force. Bai Ning makes the decision, divide the eastern half, and the alliance collapses. Su Wan did not raise her head, and her hand paused while weighing the powder. Eastern half? The water well is contaminated by mold. Even if you blow up the seeds, you won't be able to plant them. There are 2 days of water cloth left and 6 days of food. The expansion must survive the self-destruction lock first. She handed Bai Ning her notes. Infiltration plan. I'll open the valve and you guys will cover. The seeds in the vault will be sealed in 3 layers, and all seeds will be destroyed if you press them incorrectly. Join us, otherwise no one will be able to get it. Bai Ning took the notes and looked between the 2 of them. She stood up and planted the shovel in the soil. Yechen, stay behind in the well. Su Wan, you can take charge of the valve. Yechen and I will guard the patrol. The 3 of us will join forces and we will discuss the rest once we have the seeds. Yechen shrugged and put away the gun. Okay, it's up to you. But if the opportunity is missed, the east half will be theirs. He knocked on the button and obeyed. Su Wan nodded and divided the acid. Work together and filter the air first. The equipment was recovered and compressed into rows. 5 explosive bombs were placed on the track, and the barrel was covered with rubble to hide. Needle bombs were attached to the pipe gun, and the shovel was replaced with a light shovel. The map was stuffed into the waste and old cards were tied to Su Wan's wrist. The last half of the food was divided into hard noodles, and my throat was dry when I swallowed it. Bai Ning checked the pressure gauge and the needle was close to the red line. Sneak in now. Su Wan leads the valve, I am in the middle, and Yechen cuts off the back. The airway is low, and the enemy patrol is close. The 3 of them entered the cavity, stepping on the gravel, and the lights were turned off, leaving only the faint light of the rope. The cavity turns into an airway, narrow as a throat, with water dripping from the earthen wall. Su Wan was in front, checking for hidden lines in the dark. Turn left, 10 meters from Qingmei Yechen whispered. Listen footsteps. Bai Ning held the gun and held her breath. The lights flickered in the distance, and the silhouettes of 3 Alliance patrolmen crossed the curve, their guns blasting away at the wall, their voices indistinct. The vibration has stopped. The main tunnel has collapsed. Check the air pressure. The patrol approached 5 meters away, and the sound of boots crunched on the gravel. Bai Ning's heart sank. If exposed, the lock will self-destruct. She held down Yechen's arm and motioned to lean against the wall, but Su Wan had already closed the gap. The patrol stopped and the iron probe pierced the soil, 3 meters away from the tip of her nose. The tip of the iron probe scratched the earth wall, only 2 finger widths away from the tip of Bai Ning's nose. She gritted her teeth, pressed Yechen's arm with her left hand, and slowly moved the gun back with her right hand. The patrol leader whispered, "The air pressure is stable over there at the main pit of the collapse. Report back to the well, 50 people will take turns guarding." The sound of boots shifted, the shadow of the lamp lengthened, and the 3 figures turned away. Su Wan crawled out from the gap, the old card dangling on her wrist. She advanced in the dark, her knees scraping against the gravel. 5 meters from the end of the airway, the Qingmei valve is there. Bai Ning followed, holding the gun across his chest, with gravel hitting his back. She whispered, "They are taking shifts and 50 people are guarding the well. Yechen, don't hit the wall after breaking up." Yechen fell to the ground and finally got up, lightly touching the remaining iron leggings of his motorcycle. He rubbed his knees, his voice lowered to the bottom of his throat. "Shift? Opportunity. The time to blow up the well is near." His eyes scanned Su Wan's back in the dark, and he paused for a moment before moving. The 3 of them were lying on their knees, water dripping from the turning point of the airway formed into a thin stream, and the wet soil was loosened. Bai Ning stepped over puddles, and the soles of her shoes slipped. She grabbed the wall to steady herself and flashed through the camp in her mind. Asan worked in shifts to dig hands. There were 6 days of food left, and the water cloth was burned out in 2 days. The self-destructing lock pin is nearly red, counting down for half a day. "Su Wan, have you practiced valve training? If you make a mistake, all the circles will be destroyed." Su Wan didn't look back and stroked the wall along the hidden line with her fingers. 3 rounds in time, half a minute inserted. The note says that the 3 layers in the library were filled with wrong gas. The end of the airway expanded, the metal outline of the door emerged, and cold light seeped in from the gap. Amelia Su knelt down, took out the old card and pointed it at the lock slot. Yechen squatted on the side and aimed his gun at the door. "Patrol frequency is half an hour, move quickly." He tapped the barrel of the gun. The rhythm was like his heartbeat, and his eyes moved to Su Wan's wrist. Su Wan turned the card 3 times, and with a click, the door slowly opened half a meter. The cool breeze and the smell of metal rushed out, and the 3 people squeezed in. The inner room is spacious, lined with shelves, cylindrical seat cabinets line the walls, and the pressure light flashes yellow. Bai Ning closed the door, and the rope gently illuminated her notes. The first layer of sealing film, Su Wan opens it. "Yechen, listen outside the door." She divided the last half of the hard dough and the 3 of them swallowed it. Their throats were as dry as sand. Su Wan pushed up her glasses and took out the last bottle of acid. "Drop into the edge of the sealing film and bubbles will pop up." She pried off the edges with a light shovel and peeled off the film, revealing the labels on the inner tube. Corn, wheat, beans. Standard 3 layers. The first layer is vacuum preserved. Before pressing the second layer, smell the smell to verify the purity. Bai Ning nodded and moved closer to the mouth of the tube. The air is clear and there is no trace of mold. Yechen leaned against the door and put his ear to the wall. "It's quiet outside and the well is safe." He turned around and looked down at the tube. "We have the seeds, and the eastern half of the well belongs to us. Ning worked together to blow it up, and the alliance will fall apart." Su Wan pried open the second tube and stopped. "The eastern half is very moldy and cannot be planted. Concentrate on opening it." She pressed the second layer of valve, the cylinder body vibrated lightly and the cap loosened. Remove the white condensate from the tube and gently cut the film with a spatula. The seeds roll out yellow and bright. She grabbed a handful, crushed it and smelled it. Pure. Enough to last the camp for more than a month. But when the third tube was opened, Su Wan frowned. The acid dripped in and half of the film was peeled off, and a faint sweet smell floated out from the inside, like rotten fruit mixed with soil. She whispered, "It's strange. The air pressure on the second layer is uneven. It smells like mold." Bai Ning came closer, the tip of her nose trembling slightly. The sweet and fishy smell penetrates into the lungs, and old mold looms in the lungs. Yechen walked closer, grabbed the grains and tasted them. "It's not broken. Install it quickly. Time is running out." He stuffed it into his waist pocket and moved quickly. Su Wan shook her head and weighed the powder to compare. The notes didn't mention the sweet smell. Virus mutation? Don't touch the third level a priori. Bai Ning's eyes moved between the tubes. The food, water and distribution crisis, the camp waiting for seeds, and the countdown to self-destruction are half a day away. Start or stop. She held the tube tightly. Quick check. Yechen, are there any patrol sounds outside the door? The sound of boots outside the door started again, nearly 10 meters away. Yechen leaned against the door and loaded the gun. Come to, check the pressure. Su Wan hurriedly weighed the last drop of acid to check the gas pressure. Sweet and fishy, partially polluted. Take the pure one away. Bai Ning Sai pure body waste, 3 people compressed equipment. The sweet and fishy smell is strong, and the lungs are burned with old marks. She pushed Su Wan. The pure tube goes out first and the same certificate is retained. The eastern half will be discussed later. But when she turned around, the cracks in the third tube widened, green threads loomed, and the smell was like moldy cloth rekindled. The return journey of the airway is filled with sweet and fishy smell. Bai Ning stood behind the palace and mopped the floor with a gun. The patrol light flashed as she approached the bend. She held Su Wan down and said, "Fuck." The sweet taste surged in her throat and her judgment wavered. How deep is the pollution? Take it back to camp to burn your lungs, or abandon it and start over. The self-destructing needle is red. The enemy is guarding 50, and Yichen's eyes are wandering and full of explosive intent. The edge of failure is close at hand. Bai Ning clasped her fingers on Su Wan's shoulders and pressed her against the wet soil. Yechen was already lying on the front section, aiming the barrel of the gun at the curve. The shadow of the patrol light lengthened, and the sound of boots crossing the puddles was heard by the 2 men, who whispered, "The warehouse is stable, and the shift will be extended to 60. The iron detective crossed the top of the airway, only 3 finger widths above the heads of the 3 people. Bai Ning holds his breath. The sweet fishy smell burns his throat unbearably. She counted to 10 seconds, and the sound of boots faded away, turning towards the main pit. "Let's go." She whispered and stood up, the pure tube around her waist rubbing her back. Su Wan was kneeling in front, her wrists tied with old cards dangling slightly, her compression bag stuffed with corn and beans, and her wheat tube pressed against her legs. 10 meters from the end of the airway, the main pit will take over. Behind Yichen's palace, the motorcycle's iron leggings made a muffled sound. He grabbed Bai Ning's arm and said, "The patrol frequency will be shortened. If we catch up, we will explode the seal." His eyes glanced at Su Wan's back and stopped at her notebook bag. At the turning point of the airway, the water flow has reached knee-deep. The 3 of them waded through the water, and the gravel slipped on their feet. The white gel tube gun is held horizontally, and the pure tube is fixed to avoid collision. Stay the different tubes in the warehouse and get the evidence later. Self-destruct for a long time, and the enemy's well has priority. Su Wan nodded and climbed out of the airway mouth first. The wet wind from the main pit hit her face. The thin figure of Ah San came forward with a shovel, with cracks in the plaster on his face. "Sister Ning, the bomb array is stable. The enemy's drilling attack will stop for 2 hours." They slid into the main pit, the rope's dim light illuminating the earth walls. Yechen unloaded the tubes and piled them on the ground. He grabbed the corn kernels and tasted them while panting. "After more than a month, the camp is stable. The east half of the well belongs to us. If we blow it up, the alliance will break up." He turned to Su Wan, his voice was low but sharp. "Your hands shook when you tested the alien tube. You have written about the sweetness in your notes. Why did you hide it? Bring the virus back to the camp to burn." Bai Ning squatted between the two of them, placed the gun on his knees, and separated the piles of tubes. Pure yellow and plump, enough to feed 30 people in the camp for more than a month. She grabbed a handful and crushed it. The clear smell diluted the sweetness in her throat. We will discuss it after verification. Asan, seal the hole, and divide the food into half to stabilize people's hearts. Asan nodded, carried the shovel on his thin arm and turned around to dig dirt to cover his airway, muttering, "Last night someone asked about running away, but I suppressed him." She stood up, put her hand on Yechen's shoulder, and pushed him away from the arm's length. She knew that the crack was difficult to mend, but she needed help to stabilize the situation. Yechen, after the well explosion discussion. Su Wan, bring back the gas sample from the different cylinder, and check it before burning the lungs. Su Wan pushed up her glasses and knelt down to weigh the seed powder. No notes, the third layer of air pressure is misplaced. I'll tell you after the test, I didn't hide it. Her fingers trembled slightly. She avoided Yechen's eyes and turned to Bai Ning. Yechen came closer, and the scrap metal of the motorcycle touched her leg. The old cards are tied to your wrists, and the notes are hidden in the sleeves. His eyes flashed before unsealing. Did you know about the pollution? He tapped the barrel of the gun. The rhythm was as fast as a drum. The enemy drill attack outside the pit resumed, and the air pressure needle jumped slightly. After half a day of self-destruction, the old shortcut from the main pit leads to the campground. At 7 o'clock in the morning fog seeped into the cracks of the pit. The three of them compressed the pure tube and tied their waists and legs, and Asan made a light tackle. The retreat accelerated and the gravel road became slippery. Shoes were heard from behind and the patrol shouted, "Kuya Zhan!" chasing the Qi Dao. The lamp shadow approached 50 meters away. Bai Ning took the lead, dragging the gun across the ground and leaving traces. Shortcut. Explosive bomb ambush. Yechen stuffed the last bean tube into the tube and chuckled as he ran. Idiot. Catch me and die. Su Wan focused on the front, and the old card was already aimed at the keyhole of the tunnel. The enemy light swayed into view, 30 meters away. Bai Ning pushed her in, and Yechen pulled the rope to half-seal the entrance. The iron probe thrust out and cut off the rope. He cursed lowly, and the gun fired out a stinging needle. The needle embedded itself in the earth wall, and the enemy groaned and retreated. After running 50 meters into the tunnel, the main pit was connected, and Asen shoveled earth to cover the entrance. Sealed. He gasped, beads of sweat rolling down his thin face. At the top of the camp pit, a rope ladder goes up. The food piles increased and the pure tubes were unloaded. Bai Ning divided the seeds. The three of them swallowed the dry food, and the water cloth continued to burn for half a day. The campers whispered around the tube, and the worries about the strike disappeared. The retreat is successful, the short-term joy is like a warm current, and the resource crisis is relieved. Yechen nodded, tied a stinging needle to his waist. I will lead a 3-person team to operate at midnight. The eastern half deserves credit. Su Wan interjected. The seeds are planted first, tested and then exploded. The contamination will follow and the camp will be destroyed.
Bai Ning noted, trusting slightly. Su Wan cautiously complemented Yechen's impulsiveness.
Asan handed over the fragments in the picture above, and the motorcycle parts made up a half-wheel. Sister Ning, dig out the outside of the red circle, and the seeds will be transported steadily. The camp was stabilized and the counterattack plan took shape. She assigned. Yechen prepared bombs, Su Wan tried planting, and Asan took turns to dig for defense. Blow up the well at midnight to determine the direction of breaking the situation. Yechen wiped his sweat and his eyes wandered to Su Wan. If it's strange, I'll prove your innocence. Otherwise, I'll keep the rest for myself. Su Wan lowered her head to weigh the powder, speechless. Bai Ning noticed the cracks and weighed her ambitions in her heart. Under the lamp in the pit, Su Wan checked that the air pressure of the pure cylinder was stable, and no sweet smell spread. Bai Ning grabbed the shovel and pointed at the wall. 50 enemies are guarding the well, but 5 explosive bombs have not moved. The water in the well was cut off, and the alliance retreated. Moist soil was spread in the trial planting pit, and the first batch of corn was planted. Su Wan put the last drop of water on the cloth and compacted the soil. The sprouts broke through the ground overnight, and their green tips first appeared. Bai Ning came closer, feeling happy. But the next morning, the edges of the seedlings were withered and yellow, and the roots shrank as if they had been chewed. The sweet and fishy taste faintly rekindles, and the red line on the test needle jumps. She gripped the handle of the shovel tightly. Pollution seeping into the pure seed? Before the counterattack, the crisis arises again. A San came from the pit with a shovel in his hand, his face slim and dusty. Sister Ning, the red circle on the east wall has been excavated. The motorcycle is stable and can transport the seeds. But Yechen led the team to prepare ammunition last night, and said he would patrol the old shortcut, but he has not returned yet. Bai Ning nodded, weighing the delay of midnight well bombing. 30 people in the camp had heard about it, and several strong men gathered around the test pit and whispered, "The seeds are rotten, shall we starve before the alliance cuts off the water?" She turned around and dispatched. Su Wan burns the pit, and Asen seals the east wall to transport the pure tube and leaves. The explosion of the well is postponed. I will find Yechen. The worries in his heart increased, and Yechen's eyes had been wandering for a long time. The tip of Bai Ning's shovel pierced the test planting soil and dug out the first corn seedling. Threads of black spots spread like ink seeping into lus, and a sweet smell filled the nose and burned the lungs. She straightened up, flicked the soil with her gun, and glanced at the edge of the camp. Su Wan knelt down and inserted the test needle into the second plant. The red line was stable at the critical level. The contamination of the clean seed has caught up, and the air pressure at the root layer has been misaligned. The third layer of green thread has spread. She pushed up her glasses and added in a low voice, "The air sample from the foreign tube cannot test the full picture, so the test pit must be burned and discarded." At the corner of the main pit, there was a muffled sound coming from the rope ladder. Bai Ning slid down, holding the gun horizontally, stepping on the wet soil and approaching the seal of the old shortcut. There are new marks and shovel marks on the earth wall in a mess, as if they were covered up in a hurry. She pried open the half-sealed clod of earth. Inside, the remains of the motorcycle lay crooked, and 3 Stinger bullet casings were scattered. There is 1 bag less pure tube around the waist, and the beans are clearly indented. Her hand rested on the shell, her knuckles white. Yechen's barrel gun was photographed, with the muzzle pointed at the depths of the shortcut, and the words engraved beside it. Han Xiao, change the dressing in the east half. Yechen. The butt of the white tube gun hit the ground. The sound was steady but suppressed the cracks. Where did the medicine come from? A pure bean bag with a shortcut engraved with Han Xiao's name. Before you betray me, tell me. She took a step forward and the strong man took half a step back. Yechen turned around, the motorcycle's remaining iron leg ring came loose. His eyes no longer wandered, and he looked directly at her face. Ning, I should have received the eastern half. I hid half of the bag of seeds to exchange for medicine, instead of selling them all. My mother has been suffering from lung cancer for 3 months, and sweet green threads have penetrated into her blood. She can't hold on. He pulled away the gray cloth, and the medicine bottle was marked with the seal of the Korean Federation. The sweet and fishy smell of the residue at the bottom of the bottle disappeared. Su Wan interjected, her voice trembling but firm. I have tested the green silk before, and I wrote it in my notes. The third layer is not mold, it is a virus mutation, and the root layer of the net seed has been infected. Yechen contacted Han, he knew it. She handed out the note, and the crease at the corner of the page was aligned with the green silk picture. The campers gasped, and the strong man loosened the shovel handle and turned to Yechen. Bai Ning grabbed his collar, pushed him against the wall, and put the gun to his chest. Exchange dressings and sell seeds. Where are you taking the well bombing team? Han's main force of 350 people are near the well. You sell half of it in exchange for a bottle. With anger burning in her throat, she pressed her knee against his leg, forcing him to kneel down. Yechen gasped and held her wrist tightly. Han Xiao's conditions for administering the drug. Open the storage door, and the eastern half will be his. My mother coughed up blood last night, so I hid the bag and went to contact him through a shortcut. He promised not to enter the camp, but only to get the pollution canister. Ning, you orphan, I have a family to protect. He lowered his head and his voice became hoarse. Ambition? The eastern half is stable. I originally wanted to divide the 3 of them, But now I just want medicine. Bai Ning let go and took a step back. The rage turned into a crushing pain in the chest. Childhood sweethearts, from digging tunnels together to working side by side with weapons. Now they are selling a bag of medicine. The crack of trust was deeply buried. She looked at Su Wan. How long will you hide it, Lucy? There was a shout from the top of the camp pit, and Asan waved his arms. Sister Ning. Yechen is back. Bring outsiders into the east wall. Bai Ning grabbed the pipe gun and rushed up the ladder. The pit was already in chaos. Yechen stood by the experimental planting pit. There was a gray cloth bag hanging around his waist, and medicine bottles inside made a clanging sound. Two strong men stood in front of him and murmured. The well in the east half has exploded. Let's break up with Brother Yi. Su Wan stepped back, hugging her notebook bag tightly, and her eyes averted behind her glasses. The camp crowd gathered around, shovel handles clashed with each other, and flames of the strike broke out. Su Wan knelt down to weigh the remaining seedlings, avoiding the public gaze. Check the gas before opening, and record it in notes. Tell me, discard the tube and dig it again, you are not allowed. She stood up and shook her wrist lightly with the old card. The virus is spreading. Please prove the purity before burning the camp. Asan stepped forward and pulled the strong man with his thin arms. Sister Ning is talking about the matter. Yechen is betraying the situation. Shovel him. The chaos in the camp heated up, and shovels clashed with each other. Bai Ning raised her hand to stop, weighing in her mind. Killing Yechen would cost him the power, and spare him the civil strife. The well was blown up at midnight, and the east wall of the pure tube transport became the key. Drilling started again outside the pit, and the air pressure needle jumped wildly. Asan shouted. 300 of the enemy's main force are pressing into the well, patrolling and destroying the east wall. Bai Ning rushed to the top of the pit and loaded his gun. Han Xiao's figure appeared in the fog, with a tall silhouette waving a flag, and 300 figures swarmed into the pit. He took off his mask, and the edges and corners of his face were as familiar as before. Bai Ning stopped shoveling. I brought the medicine. Achan said you were an orphan. I have proof. Mother's necklace, given to her the night before the tunnel. He threw out the silver chain, and the pendant was engraved with Ninger, and it fell straight to her feet. The campers were stunned. She picked it up, and the memory fragments exploded. Old acquaintance of brother and sister. Intrusion of misunderstanding? On the eve of the climax, the raid begins. She grabbed Yechen's arm and pulled him towards the corner of the pit to whisper, Give the medicine to my mother, and I won't tell the difference between the East and the West. But the Korean connection is broken, otherwise the first shot of the gun will go into the heart. Yechen nodded, his eyes as complicated as the wet mist in the old tunnel. Ning, thank you. Sadness welled up and she patted his shoulder, turned around and dispatched. Asan transports the tube and leaves. Su Wan burns the seedlings to check for disability. Yechen, make up the team, blow up the well as agreed. The cracks were temporarily repaired, and the camp was stable for a moment. Her mood was as low as water at the bottom of a pit, and she knew that the price of betrayal had not yet been paid. Bai Ning bent down to pick up the silver chain and pinched the pendant with the word Ninger between her fingertips. She turned around and walked about 3 meters, holding her gun across her arms, her eyes locked on Han Xiao. A tall figure stands at the entrance of the pit. 300 figures shoveling flags are approaching, and the patrol outside the red circle on the east wall has broken through 5 meters of ground. The camp retreated, and Asan blocked the 2 strong men with a shovel. Han Xiao waved his hand to stop the team and took off his mask. Sister, 10 years after the tunnel collapsed, I thought you were dead. The Alliance's pursuit of the seed bank was a misunderstanding. He took a step forward, and his boots stomped on clods of soil. The green thread is not mold. It's the mother plant virus. It spreads and burns up the wasteland. Asen stepped forward with the shovel. Sister Ning, blow up the well and cut off the water first. Bai Ning stopped and loaded the gun. Where's the evidence? 300 people invaded and a chain was exchanged for a truce. Han Xiao crumpled the paper from his pocket and threw it over the edge of the pit. When the paper fell to the ground, she stepped forward and stepped on it, scanning her mother's handwriting. Shower, protect Ning and escape through the tunnel. The memory was put together. Her brother dug the wall with her back, and the virus fog swallowed the camp. Why do you have the old notes? Bai Ning raised her gun and pointed it at his chest. The Alliance mines old card signals 10 years old. Han Xiao raised his hand without moving. Yechen asked me to change the dressing. I, Su Dongban, will not enter the camp and only seal the pollution canister. She narrowed her eyes. 50 people were invaded and patrolled. Did you already know about my mother's death? Why didn't you contact us earlier? Han Xiao lowered his head. The signal is cut off, and the wilderness misinformed you that you are dead. Before my mother burned her lungs, she told the seeds to save the homeland, not to fight for the land. As the balance deepened, she took a half-step back. Yechen rushed out from the corner of the pit, swinging his gray cloth medicine bag over his shoulders and jingling his motorcycle leg rings. He grabbed 3 scattered stinger shell casings and stuffed them into his belt. Ning, I mistakenly sold the seed to Lianhan. Last night he took a shortcut and his breath smelled like a sweet smell burning his lungs. He turned to the east wall, and 2 strong men followed him hesitantly. Replenish the team and seal the breach in the patrol. The leader slid down the rope ladder and shoveled the sound. The atonement operation is launched, and the chaos in the camp is slightly suppressed. Su Wan stood up, pushed up her glasses and handed over the needle. The green silk mother plant spreads, and the black spots on the test roots are buried in the soil. The Han photocop it is true. The red line passed the critical point, and Bai Ning took over and nodded. San, carry the pure tube motorcycle outside the red circle on the east wall, leaving 2 strong men to guard it. Su Wan, burn the edge of the pit to prove that the remaining seeds are pure. San picked up a tube, rolled the soil with the motorcycle wheel, and transported out the first batch of corn beans. Resources remained stable for more than a month. Han Xiao followed the motorcycle with his eyes. The Alliance blocked the tunnel network, and the virus burned down the eastern half. He picked up the flag and planted it on the edge of the pit. The 300 people stepped back 10 meters and stopped. Bai Ning walked around the edge of the pit. 1 person enters the camp to check the green silk aura. Patrol the east wall and break it. Yechen seals it. She gave way and lowered her gun. There was a muffled explosion in the pit. Yechen's team shoveled and patrolled. The first stinger projectile was shot out, and the earth wall collapsed 3 meters to block the breach. But the second patrol iron detective pierced him, and the needle hit his leg ring. The remains of the motorcycle were stained with blood. He gritted his teeth and climbed the ladder, and a strong man helped him up the pit. Throw in the second shell. Ning, the road to the well was blocked for 2 days. Redeem the east half of the mistake. The gray cloth medicine bag fell, and the sweet and fishy residue was sprinkled on the soil. The leg injury delayed the team and deepened the cost. Han Xiao went into the camp alone, took Su Wan's gas sample tube, and took a closer look. The mother plant is confirmed. The cause of my mother's burning lungs the night before the tunnel. He still took care of it and retreated from the edge of the pit. The 3rd level of cooperative sealing, purebreds are divided into alliances, and the eastern half is guarded together. Bai Ning grabbed the gun. Certify the burning test pit, and transport the tube back to the stable camp. Yechen is injured, and the medicine will be replenished. She turned around to dispatch, and the relationship took a turn for the worse. Su Wan lit a fire to burn the pit. Green threads and black smoke flew high, and she checked the needle to stabilize the edge of the seed. The remaining tube is clean and can last for more than a month. Asen returned on his motorcycle and unloaded the second tube into a hidden place on the east wall. The campers grasped their shovels again, and the strong men followed. Yechen leaned against the wall and panted, while the strong man pressed his leg to stop the bleeding. Ning, I'll help the well explosion team. Even if my leg is broken, I can dig it out. She patted him on the shoulder. The next morning, the top floor of the camp was filled with gray fog. Bai Ning stood on the edge of the red circle on the east wall with a gun in his hand, his eyes following the smoke from the motorcycle. Asen unloaded the 3rd tube of corn beans. Sweat mixed with soil stains smeared across his face. Sister Ning, the water bag is empty. The well has been closed for 2 days, and everyone's lips are split and bloodshot. She nodded and turned to Han Xiao. Is the 300 shovel defense line stable? The source self-destruct lock sounded in the middle of the night, and the green silk soil layer has climbed 5 meters. Han Xiao looked back with the shovel, and the flagpole was firmly inserted into the soil. The Alliance blocked the east entrance of the tunnel network and patrolled to remove all the remaining needles. But deep inside the mother plant, we had to blow up the different tubes to remove the roots. The water crisis is approaching, and the decision to cooperate hangs by a thread. Su Wan pushed up her glasses, knelt on the burnt edge of the test pit, and inserted the needle into the black smoky soil. There are no spots left in the pure seed, but the green silk roots have penetrated into the bedrock. She paused and lowered her voice. I hit it. The third layer of sweet and fishy smell is not mold, but the mutation of the mother plant in the old notebook. I have already tested it, and it is the source of the burning lungs. Bai Ning squatted down and pinched her shoulders gently. Wan or sisterly love, why didn't you tell me earlier? I tried to plant withered yellow, and the camp almost burned down. Su Wan took out an old card from her waist pocket and spread out the green silk pattern. I'm afraid that everyone will abandon the whole tube and dig again. There is a solution in my mother's notes. The residual water from the well dilutes the acid residue and heats it to seal the vein. But when the acid is gone, I have to boil it with water. The confession opened the cracks. Clues to the antidote emerged, and trust was slowly restored. Yechen leaned against the wall and struggled to get up. His legs were wrapped in bloody cloth and turned black. His feet crushed the gray cloth medicine bag, and the sweet and fishy residue hit his nostrils. He grabbed the last of the loose sting casings and stuffed them into his belt. Ning, I'm going to replenish the well explosion team. Han's breath is as sweet as Grandma's burning lungs. It's my fault for the East Half's ambition. It's for the medicine to prolong her life. The strong man handed over the shovel. He pushed it away roughly, slid down the rope ladder and went straight to the breach in the east wall. After 2 days of delay, the patrolling iron detective came again and the whole camp was destroyed. Bai Ning stepped forward to stop him. The legs are broken. Stay in the camp and hold down the strong man. He threw her hand away and locked his eyes on her face. 10 years of childhood, you believe me with the last shovel. The air pressure needle on the top of the pit jumped wildly, and green threads and black veins sprang out 2 meters from the cracks in the soil. Han Xiao waved a flag and summoned 20 shovelers to dig a defensive trench around the east wall. Sister, Yechen breaks the source of the well. Let's seal the third layer of alien cylinders. The white condensed tube gun was loaded and followed by the first row. Split the pure cylinder in half to prove your sincerity. Asan, the motorcycle will continue its journey to the hidden place, leaving the strong man to guard the last drop of water. Asan responded, and the wheels rolled over the soil to transport the fourth cylinder away. The 30-man battalion was divided into 2 teams, one guarding the entrance of the pit and the other digging the ravine. The shovel sounds of the Alliance and the Horde are in sync, and external threats become a common line of defense.
Beistert atan sambaing.
Join hands to seal the source, otherwise we will not recognize our brother. Han Xiao nodded and waved a flag to summon the team. The air pressure needle outside the pit jumped wildly, and the self-destruct lock cylinder sounded deep inside. Su Wan shouted. The green silk soil layer is expanding. Postpone the burning of the camp. 300 shovels were launched, and the Alliance shifted to the defensive line. Bai Ning led the camp to dig walls, and continued to transport barrels on motorcycles. The spread of the virus is overwhelming. How to block the source? Han Xiao grabbed the rope ladder and jumped down first, shoveling away the mound of soil. Yechen blocked the well in trance. Bai Ning followed, using his gun to open up the pile of rubble. Yechen was half buried in the soil, his leg rings were broken, and the needle shells melted into the green silk veins. He gasped and raised his hand, holding the gray cloth remnants in his palm. Ning, the medicine is worth half the price for the medicine. My mother's lungs are burning, and I'm hiding it from my ambition to seal it. After the words fell, his hands loosened and his pulse stopped. Bai Ning knelt down and dug away the soil, covering his eyes with tears mixed with dust and smeared across his cheeks. The 10-year bamboo horse just ended at the mouth of the well. She whispered, "You have redeemed yourself enough." The pain was swallowed up like a tide, and the strong man carried the body to the pit to seal the relationship forever. Su Wan handed over the hot cloth to wrap the body, her voice hesitant. How to boil the antidote. Soak the remaining water in the well with acid residue, and heat it to seal the veins. The green silk mother plant is broken, leaving 80% of the tube clean. Han Xiao nodded, pulled the flag from the well mouth and planted it firmly. The alliance promises to keep the eastern half together, and divide it equally among purebreds. I'll give you all my mother's old notes. He threw out the card from his pocket and spread the whole picture on the top of the pit. Bai Ning stood up and inserted the gun into the soil. Burn Yechen's gray cloth to test the last sweet smell. San, collect the water drops and boil it down. The camper stood in silence for a minute around the corpse, then turned around and shoveled the ditch. Pain turns to determination, and the fire of redemption is ignited. In the afternoon, the ditch was dug 2 meters deep to stop the green veins from spreading. Yesen's motorcycle carried back the last tube and unloaded it in a hidden place. Su Wan led 5 people to set up a pot of water. The acid residue was boiling, and the steam was steaming to seal the needle. After soaking the clean seeds for half a day, the root spots will recede. Bai Ning stood by the pot and looked at Han Xiao's 300 shovel hands. Brother, the signal has been interrupted for 10 years, and all misunderstandings of the alliance have been resolved. Let's stop the virus in the tunnel network together. Han Xiao stood side by side with the shovel in his hand. Sister, mother asked seeds to save our homeland, not to fight for a piece of land. Let's build an oasis in the east half together. The old relationship between brother and sister has been restored, and the foundation of cooperation is solid. There was an explosion under the east wall, the first stinger ejected, and the shaft collapsed half a meter. Yechen shouted intermittently. The green thread is wrapped around the remaining iron of the motorcycle. Pull it out. The strong man replied. Brother Chan, the iron probe has pierced the leg bone. Bai Ning lay on the edge of the pit, pounding his fist into the soil, thinking. I can't miss him again. Dust spewed out and she shouted. Pull him up. A second muffled explosion followed, and the entire earth wall collapsed. Black smoke mixed with sweet smell hit their faces, and the campers coughed and retreated 3 meters. Su Wan's needle fell to the ground. The self-destruct lock is triggered and the alien cylinder is about to explode. On the top of the camp pit, the black smoke cleared and the air pressure needle returned to 0. The strong man compacted the soil on Yechen's grave and inserted a needle shell as a mark. Brother Chen broke the well, and the camp continued for more than a month. Bai Ning patted San on the shoulder. The whole tube is hidden. After the water is cut off and boiled, the first pit of corn is planted. Su Wan stood up, her glasses reflecting the light of the fire. After soaking, the root veins will be white. If planted, can the wasteland be changed? The shovels stopped and looked at the new soil in the test pit. The night is overwhelming, and the brazier on the top of the camp pit reflects the red shovel handle. Bai Ning straightened up, and the grains of soil slipped from his fingers. The first grain of corn was buried in ashes. She looked at Amelia Su. Her voice was steady and tired. 70% is enough. San, patrol the hiding place. Leave 2 tubes for Brother Han's 300 people. San nodded, the motorcycle engine roared away, and the tires pressed out of the new track. Han Xiao put away the flagpole, turned around and said to the strong men, the eastern half of the defense ditch will be deepened by 1 meter, and shovels will be brought in tomorrow morning to change the shift. The 300 figures dispersed, the sound of shovels faded away, and the cooperative defense line began to take shape. Su Wan retracted the needle and pushed away the fog on her glasses. After the roots were soaked, no spots spread. But after the water supply was cut off, the second pit had to wait for the rainy season. She squatted down and gently touched the edge of the test pit to burn the soil. The remaining water from the well is exhausted. The new source turns west in the tunnel network. The old map shows the underground veins. Bai Ning nodded, took out the mother's note card from her belt, and spread out the green silk map. Brother, does the alliance have probes? Let's dig together in Shiguai. Han Xiao took the card and traced the line with his thick finger. There are 50 detectives, we will team up tomorrow. Sister, the signal has been out for 10 years, I thought you were dead. The old gap between the brother and sister was filled. Resource clues were connected, and new water sources emerged. The strong men gathered around the brazier to share the last drops of water, coughing intermittently. Bai Ning approached Yechen's grave, and the needle shell shone coldly in the moonlight. She knelt down and pressed hard to loosen the soil. "Chun, you gave me this pit with your last shovel." The sweet smell of the burned gray cloth dissipated, and the pain was like the scab of an old wound. Asan came back and reported in a low voice. "The barrel is stable. After the eastern half is divided equally, the camp can last for 2 months." Bai Ning stood up and put the gun on his shoulder. "Guard the pit in shifts before going to bed. Su Wan, prepare the syringe and check the first moment the buds sprout." Everyone dispersed, and there was only the sound of shoveling on the top of the pit, fatigue mixed with waiting. The gray fog filled the air at dawn, and the air pressure needle trembled slightly. Bai Ning was the first to rush to the edge of the pit, and Su Wan was already kneeling by the soil, inserting the needle into the new soil. "The shell is broken. The white veins at the root extend 1/2 centimeter." She raised her head and her voice was unusually light. 70% becomes 90%, and the antidote seals the remaining poison. Bai Ning leaned over and gently dug the topsoil with the shovel. The first green tip pierced the ash layer, like a blade cutting through the wasteland. The tender leaves trembled slightly when she touched them with her fingers. "That's enough." Han Xiao came over with 20 shovel hands and carried iron probes into Shiguai Road. The water pulse started and it took 2 hours to dig it out. Cooperation accelerated and the water source crisis was solved. At dusk, the first grain of pure corn fell into the soil. Bai Ning shoveled the soil and buried it, and Han Xiao poured the last drop of water on it. Su Wan probed the root with a needle. No spots, 70% chance of germination. 30 people and 300 figures surrounded the pit, holding shovel handles. The green thread threatens to blockade Yichun at the cost. But can the new sprouts really pierce the ashes of the wasteland? Everyone held their breath. A miracle hung on a thread. At noon, all the green tips came out of the second pit, and the top of the pit expanded to 3 acres. Bai Ning stood on a high soil slope, with the gun inserted into the ground, looking at the collapsed wellhead on the east wall. Next to the soil of Yechen's tomb, new shoots grew around the tomb. She thought, from the tunnel digger to the leader of this pit, trust has been broken twice. Su Wan hid the mother plant. Yichun sold the seeds to change the medicine, and Brother Han misunderstood it for 10 years. But every crack forces her to make a choice: abandon people and dig again, or weld together and move forward. Strategy is not a cold knife. It is the fire buried under the shovel. Home is not a clod of earth. It is the shovel handles held by everyone. She whispered. Rebuilding starts with trusting yourself. The inner peace is like a new vein of water. The engineer's defense transforms into a strategy, and responsibility is embraced in the chest. The strong man Asen pushed the motorcycle loading tube and unloaded the second pit of corn and beans. Sister Ning, let's plant it. Bai Ning took the tube, picked out 80% of the seeds with her own hands, and dropped them into the bottom of the pit. Han Xiao poured the first bucket of new water, and the veins were clear and sweet. The oasis in the eastern half starts from this pit. 300 shovelers and 30 people from the battalion covered the soil side by side, shoveling in rhythm. Su Wan took a needle along the pit to confirm that there were no spots. The root network is connected, and the harvest will be harvested in more than a month. The prototype of the oasis appeared. The boundaries of the tribal alliance were blurred, and the resources were divided equally and shared. Han Xiao approached and handed the shovel handle. Sister, the west entrance of the tunnel network is blocked, and there is no trace of the green thread. But the east half has old patrol needles, and the smell of burning lungs occasionally floats. Bai Ning took the shovel and dug the third pit side by side. Brother, the alliance has collapsed. Let's build an oasis together and bear the aftermath of the virus together. Su Wan joined in and compared the needles. Last page of Mother's notes. Mutation is constant, and the seed's antibodies must continue to survive. Asen patrolled the pit on his motorcycle, shouting, Plant all the tubes and the harvest will be enough for 500 people in 2 months. Everyone laughed, shoveling soil flying, and exhaustion turned into a rhythm. As dusk deepens, the corn leaves in the first pit stretch out 3 inches, and the oasis expands. A simple shed was built on the top of the camp pit, and bean soup was cooked in a brazier for 300 people. Bai Ning sat alone by the tomb, brushing away the new sprouts on Yechen's soil. You hide your ambition to save my mother's life. I understand, there is no pure person in the end of the world. She stood up, loaded the gun, and walked towards the pit. Han Xiao waved a flag and summoned. Night patrol team up, ditch defense reinforcement. Su Wan pushed up her glasses and took the needle team to check the roots. The antibodies are stable, and the chance of recovery is 95%. Asan pressed the shed pillars. Sister Ning, our home is stable. As night fell, the oasis lights were lit, and the figure on the top of the pit stretched. Bai Ning stood at the front, shoveling into the central mound and looking towards the end of the wasteland. At the east entrance of the tunnel, there were faint cracks in the soil, and a hint of sweet smell floated in the wind. Under the new buds, remnants of the virus may lie dormant, testing the alliance's endurance. But at this moment, the corn leaves reflected the light of the fire, and the shovels formed an eternal circle. She took a deep breath, calm as deep as her roots. A new era begins from this green piercing the ashes.